Hey, you know what? I asked Google and I asked Alexa, how do you restore a steam locomotive? Well, they didn't have the answer and they told me to go ask Siri. Let's try it. Hey Siri, how do you restore a steam locomotive?
Okay, I found this on the web for how do you restore a steam locomotive. Check it out.
Oh man, this is 3 videos on old steam locomotives. They don't really tell me how to do it. I think we need to take and talk to some experts. Listen, let's head out to the engine house at the Nevada Northern Railway where they're actually working on a steam locomotive. This is Trains Live. Hey folks, Google, Alexa, even Siri, they're not helping us with our steam restoration project. That generational knowledge being handed down from age to age, so important as we look at steam preservation here in the 21st century. We got to call in some experts to further our discussion. We're going to go out to the Nevada Northern Railway in Ely, Nevada. We're actually ducking into their shop here to this is going to be a real treat. Actual shop, locomotives, guys with grease, the whole bit. With us today, Mark Bassett, who is president of the Nevada Northern Railway Museum. He also does some cooking and bottle washing if you talk nicely to him. Their shop foreman here. And now I got Lennox in trouble already because he's laughing about the boss. Our shop foreman, Lennox Purinton, with us as well. Gentlemen, welcome to Trains Live. So good to have you along today.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Good to be here.
So, okay, first thing, we're going to start restoring a locomotive, number 40 in your collection. It is a 1910 Baldwin 460. Okay, what's special about this machine? What's the big deal with restoring it?
Locomotive 40 was purchased by the Nevada Northern Railway in July of 1910. She's always been here. And she was the passenger locomotive. At that time, the railroad, all of its steam locomotives were from Elko, but they went to Baldwin for the passenger locomotive. And because of her significance, she is actually an official Nevada state symbol. She is the official locomotive of the great state of Nevada.
Wow, okay. I'm going to guess, and just thinking about this, not many states out of the 50 here that have got official locomotives, so that's a big deal. It's also kind of interesting, a smaller railroad like Nevada Northern actually going to 2 different manufacturers, one for passenger, one for freight. That seems a little bit odd in some cases.
It is very odd. In fact, behind us here is locomotive 81. She was the second Baldwin that the railroad purchased. All of her other locomotives here were from the American Locomotive Company. And we're not quite sure why 40 and 81 were purchased from Baldwin. But someone said, let's do Baldwin.
So somebody somewhere someday was looking, at the product catalog and said, yeah, I like this. Okay, and I got enough authority here. I really like this. Okay.
It came down to master mechanic's choice. If he came from somewhere that had Baldwin, he was going to go for a Baldwin. And
sure.
That's probably why they ended up with the first 4 being Alco. The first master mechanic wanted Alcos.
Makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's why, today some trucking fleets are one make, some are another. That's, so you guys in the shop there carry a little weight with, those of us that are in the clean environment, as it were. So the locomotive is in for 15-year inspection, so we're going to be looking at the boiler, making sure that's sound. But then also the running gear is going to get worked over here this time. What were the things that you found in the running gear that kind of tripped and said, hey, we've got to do that along with the inspection this time?
Actually, that goes back to the 1920s. In 1924, April of 1924, the railroad put new axles in the locomotive. And then at the same time, we're in White Pine County. It's the powerhouse county of Nevada. All the other counties in Nevada are suffering except here because of the copper mine, the mill, and the smelter. And then this gentleman called Henry Ford invented this thing called the Model T. And what happened is the workers here all bought Model Ts. And the first hard surface road in Nevada is from Ely up to Salt Lake City. And so passenger service went like that. The railroad is losing money left and right. If you're the head honcho, you're not going to put any more money in Locomotive 40 than you absolutely have to. And so passenger service ended in 1941. Thankfully, the Public Utilities Commission said, you know what? You have to save a steam locomotive, a passenger locomotive, and passenger cars. That's why Locomotive 40 still exists. Wow. And so she was pushed into the engine house. She sat there until 1956, which is the 50th anniversary of the founding of the railroad. The president of the railroad asks his boss at the copper company, hey, can we run it for the 50th anniversary? The answer is yes. But again, no money goes into the running gear except what's absolutely necessary. After the 50th anniversary, you got the 60s, the railroad does excursions, and again, minimal money. And then we take over in 1983, 1987, 40 rolls out of the house again. And again, just enough money to keep her rolling down the track. We do her boiler work in 2004 and 5, but just enough money for the boiler. And now the running gear, the axles are at the condemning limit. Some of the pins are look like crankshafts, and the rods clink to beat the band.
Okay, so this is probably the deferred maintenance story of all times here. Okay.
Finally caught up with him.
Yeah. All right. Makes sense. So there's a lot of things that need to be fixed, need to be worked on to bring the locomotive back up to snuff. Now, this to me is where the story gets interesting. We've got a locomotive from 1910. Obviously, there have been other locomotives around the country that of this age that have been restored. We've got wheel issues and axle issues that date to 1924, and we've got a young gentleman standing here as our shop foreman who, Lennox, if I've got it right, you're all of what, about 19, 20 years old?
Just turned 20.
Just turned 20. So you're born back in 2004, decades after steam locomotives have stopped running, and you and your master mechanic, John Henry McDonnell, are going to tackle this steam locomotive, and I imagine with a lot of help from volunteers and whatever. But where do you guys start? We said at the top of the program here, hey, you can't go to Google and say, how do you restore a steam locomotive? Where do you guys start?
Luckily, we had a few good mentors that knew what they were talking about, one of them being Gary North. I can't thank Gary North enough for what he's taught us both. The other thing is this railroad was very strange in the fact that they were a hoarder. They kept a lot of manuals, a lot of parts, a lot of everything. Okay. So sometimes we can find a worn out part and go, oh, look, a new one. That's what it's supposed to look like? Okay, we'll fix it. And sometimes we have the manual for it, so we can go through and figure it out from there. And then, like I say, some of it's just knowledge that was passed down from those of us who had done it before, and now it's on our shoulders.
And there's something else I want to inject here, too. You mentioned Lennox was born in 2004. 2004 is when we did the last 15-year boiler inspection on Locomotive 40.
Sure. And
our master mechanic at the time was a gentleman called Jack Anderson, wonderful steam mechanic, had lots of knowledge, the whole bit, and Jack was like 3 months older than I am. Locomotive 40 is stripped down, the tubes are out, the whole bit. Jack calls up and says, I have a headache. I'm going to come in after lunch. And I go, great, see you then. My wife calls me and says, get to Jack's house now. And I go, why? Now. I run over there, walk in the door. Jack's wife is crying. His son is crying. I look across the room and I can see a blanket over a chair, and underneath the blanket are boots. Jack had died that morning. And when he died, that was a tragedy for his family, for the railroad here, for the steam fraternity. And I actually came down to the engine house that night and stood in front of locomotive 40, and you could look through the entire locomotive. And I said, now what? And so that night, I sort of swore an oath that I would involve young men and women to maintain this stuff. There's no sense in raising all this money if the knowledge isn't passed down.
Sure.
And Lennox actually started here when he was 6.
I've heard stories about starting off with weed pulling and annoying the shop guys till they gave you the dirty work, and you hung around long enough and proved your mettle and you got a job out of the thing. And so, Lennox, I think that leads me to one of the big things that I would like to know here. You know, we look at this locomotive, which has got an incredible history, has had some tragedy, as Mark just explained, and you know, now you and John Henry, and John Henry, by the way, is all of about 30 years old, are going to lead and tackle this machine. What gives you the confidence to go in and to, I mean, what gives you the confidence to walk in the door in the morning and go, guess what? We're going to start restoring this thing today, and somewhere down the road, we're going to have it right and it's going to run. Number 40, yeah, but you know.
I know, this is what gives us the confidence.
Oh, okay, that one.
You know, just maintaining 40 and 93 and just keeping them going and keeping them going and keeping them going. And then it was this one. And that's where I learned a lot of it, and I'm sure that's where John learned a lot of it too. And now it's out there pulling the weight every day, and we couldn't be happier with it. Okay. And you know, going through that engine and learning a lot about it gives us a little more confidence with this one.
Wow. It
might take us longer than some guys who have been in the field for God knows how long, but we'll get it there. We'll do it.
This is I don't want to say a trial by fire, but it's almost it's an example situation. You've got the trophy is hanging on the wall right there behind you, and when you see it run, you know, hey, I was part of the crew that did that. No reason I can't do it again. I think that goes to that whole generational thing that both of you have mentioned, passing these things along, and I just, you know, I can't get over the, you know, Mark, like you said, bringing in young folks to work on these, and we've got past projects, and now we're gonna go at it again. But we've got even our own past knowledge to work with. Pretty incredible. Tell me something. As we are going through this round, are we writing things down?
Some of it. Some of it. I mean, some of it's like pretty self-explanatory. Some of it's like, oh, we didn't know that was broken. Make note of that and fix it. And then usually the notes get put in one of our boxes or our lockers and held on to. But it's not like we're writing our own, you know, step-by-step guide to rebuild spring rigging. We're going through. You take it apart, it's broken, you fix it. I don't know how to explain. You figure it out and go from there. The only things that really get recorded are just dimensions and what we made them to. That's about it.
I'm building on that too. Each steam locomotive is pretty unique unto itself. And so, you know, the common things are the measurements and the whole bit, but, you know, the parts aren't interchangeable or anything like that. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And I guess it's one of those kind of things where, again, there's that knowledge. Okay, I'm not a machinist. I'm not a shop guy. I come to volunteer, and you're gonna give me a dirty work project. Scrape the paint off of this or get the grease off of that. But like you said, Lennox, if you look at a spring, or if you look at air compressor or wiring or whatever, you're going to look at it and go, yeah, Bob, we got to fix this, and we got to fix this, and we got to fix this. And hopefully with the idea of always having fresh young blood working through the system, some of the notes in the locker actually are passed along. Do you think that when you are done, all those notes out of the locker and all those little scraps are going to get combined somewhere and put on a shelf there at the museum?
Yeah, they are.
You can read them.
You can read them, yeah. We have an archivist, and we have an online archive that people can access. And basically, everything we do here, we're scanning and putting up on the archive. Now, Lennox's notes may look like chicken scratches, but they can be decipherable. John Henry is keeping sort of a master book, since he is the master mechanic. And, but as Lennox says, some of this is just doing it. I mean, Lennox has been observing what we're doing down here since he was 6 years old. And that is a big part of it, because even some of the books, they just tell you, well, you need to do this, but they don't explain how. Yeah.
Sure.
They explain how it should operate, not how to fix it.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So, I mean, Lennox, really, you are probably the epitome of a homegrown product. You know, I mean, if I compared you to a baseball player, you're somebody that has come up through every level of the farm system, and you're now you're the big show. You're in the big dance. This is the big leagues now for you. Give me some ideas along the way, that things that picked up, that one, I guess, inspired you to keep doing this, but you know, kind of also what some of the most valuable things that you picked up along the way that have gotten you to where you are today working with steam locomotives.
A lot of it was the people that I was involved with when I got started. Our first master mechanic I knew was Al Gledhill, and Al was a gruff guy, but you know, obviously didn't scare me off. I didn't know him for super long or super well, but I knew him. And then the next master mechanic I knew was Henry, and Henry, Gary, John, all of them, I grew close to them. They were best friends practically. And I came down here every weekend just to do something with my time. And every time I came, I learned something, whether it was greasing or oiling or firing. Didn't matter what it was. I had a good time doing it. And the good time you have doing it when you've got good people to be around is what you hold on to. You hold on to the good memories, and you learn something from the good memories. You know, those are things I'll remember forever, you know, just things that they didn't really think twice about, that I had a good time doing and learned from. And now that memory's back there, and I reference it sometimes. That's a lot of it is that, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just things I learned from them and had a good time doing. I just hold on to them.
On the flip side of the coin, from the management's point of view, you have to trust them, and you have to understand they're going to make mistakes, and you have to understand and guide them to come back from those mistakes. Lennox was promoted to fireman when he was 18 years old, and
3 weeks after I turned 18.
3 weeks after he turned 18, and his engineer was Nicholas, and Nicholas had just got promoted to engineer, and he was 19 years old. And in the rotation of crews, the engine crew for that day was Nick at 19, Lennox at 18, to haul a train load of people up a 2% grade, operating a century-old steam locomotive. And people came to me and said, they're kids. And I go, yeah, they are, but they're very well trained, and I trust them. And that's the important thing.
You know, and Mark, what you just said, there is nothing that can speak volumes about your organization beyond what you just said there. You know, I mean, and you guys do a beautiful job of promoting yourself and all the programs that you have and all the opportunities that you have there. But to be able to, you know, in a setting like this, say, look, I got 18 and 19-year-olds that are running century-old pieces of equipment, and I'm trusting them with paying patrons to this organization that, I mean, mic drop, that's it, check all the boxes, we're home. That is incredible. That is really, really incredible.
But it isn't that incredible, especially if you look at history. Look at the pictures of World War II. Look at the soldiers storming Normandy. They're 17, 18, 19 years old.
Sure.
We trusted them then. I mean, in the Army Air Force, the old man was 23. So
Yep.
there is this trust.
Yeah. And you know, I think the other part of that, and you make a good point, and I think the kind of the exclamation point on it is that we tend to lose track of some of that today. And you know, I mean, especially when we're talking about steam locomotives. Okay, I mean, if you look at the image that we see of you two gentlemen there in the roundhouse, and you say, okay, pick out the one that should be working on the steam locomotive, you know, what's the, the one over there, you know? But when you also look and you see, you know, the youth movement that you guys have, that's where it becomes really incredible. So, hey, Lennox, something personal curious about as you're working on the locomotive or you know, as you're moving through a restoration, what's a good day? What is a good day for you in working on a project like this?
When you can get something done that you set out to do. Some days you get started on something and it fights you for a day, 2 days, 3 days, and you feel like you got nowhere. 40's been sitting in the same place with all of its drivers out for months. It doesn't look like anything's gotten done except for, you know, now we've got an ultrasound grid on the boiler. Okay. But it's not exactly what everyone sees that, you know, is happening. You know, sometimes you can't see the work that's going on because it's a part this big that someone took in under their wing and adopted and went through. Mm-hmm. A day that even something small like that can get done and you can move on to something else, it's a good day. You got something done.
When something doesn't go right for you, does it keep you up at night? Are you like consumed with this? I got to figure this thing out. You know?
Sometimes most of that thought process happens while I'm at work and I go through it with the other guys. I'm like, what is this? This doesn't make sense to me. What's wrong with it? And they'll, you know, sometimes nobody knows. And then, you know, 6 a.m. when I'm getting ready, I go, oh, I bet that's what it is. You know, and I come back and it might not work, but it was a thought, you know.
Sure.
I don't let it consume me too much when I can't figure it out. It will either resolve itself or get resolved one way or another. And that's half of it. Sometimes problems resolve themselves. They're just, you're looking at it and you go, oh, it was this. Or sometimes it requires a lot of thought and consideration, but it is what it is every day. Even if it's something you've worked on 10 times before, it'll always be something new.
Sure. I love that such a basic, down-to-earth approach that you guys have. It is, and I guess that's one other thing I kind of wanted to ask about is, you know, I've been into some restoration shops where there is a very high degree of contemporary technology that's being used. And unfortunately, not yet. I say not yet. Having visited you folks there at the Northern Nevada Railway Museum, what level of technology are you working with? Are there modern pieces of equipment that are encroaching on the project, or are we really grassroots back in the steam era?
We're pretty much back in the steam era. We don't have anything CNC, anything like. We've got, you know, modern power tools like DeWalt's and angle grinders, stuff like that. But all the machinery, the lathes, the mills, it's all. I mean, I think the newest thing is what, from the 50s?
Yeah.
It's from the 70s. We have a German lathe from the 70s that Kennecott bought new, and they didn't want it, so it came down here, and even that gets put to use. But it's none of it's CNC.
Sure.
And it's all, you take the measurements, you plan it out, you figure it out, and you start from scratch. And
beautiful.
Ask me how I know. Sometimes you just have to start over. It is what it is. Like I say, it is what it is. You just got to sometimes pick up and start over, or it'll work.
Yeah. Wow. Just that is so, to me, that is so impressive, because it is, you know, the challenge of knowledge through the generations being passed down. You know, working in a situation to, you know, basically, I mean, your newest tool you're talking about is a half century old, and we've got this youth movement that is restoring this piece of equipment that's over 100 years old, and it's going to work, and it's going to be, you know, it's going to pass inspection, and it's going to run, and people are going to come out there to see it. And what I hope folks get out of this is that you got to look beyond that steam locomotive that's going down the tracks, and you've got to look at the whole story. You know, that's why, to me, the story behind these things, you know, what's a good day in the shop, that's all part of it. You know, that's all part of those notes that got to come out of the locker there at the end of this thing. So, okay, I know I will get asked, how long a process are we looking at? What are we thinking time-wise here?
Oh, you know, it's a steam locomotive that was built in 1910. And so far, so good. You know, it should be sometime next year.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but that's God willing, the creek don't rise.
Sure.
And
Okay.
if, you know, we basically take care of all of the locomotives. I mean, we're focusing in on locomotive 40, but locomotive 81 is our main locomotive right now. If it should develop an issue, everything stops on 40 and we take care of 81. Locomotive 93, our other 280 steam locomotive, developed an issue, and we thought it would be a moderately quick fix, and it has not turned out to be that way. We've learned a lot from it, and so that's delayed locomotive 40. So, yeah, but yeah, God willing, the creek don't rise. It should be late next year, maybe rolling into 2025.
I actually like, there was a quote on your website from the previous inspection of number 40. Somebody had asked, basically the question I just did, when's it going to be ready? And the comment was made, it'll be ready when we throw the first match in the firebox and not before that.
And that's a very true story.
There we go. Tell you what, we're gonna step aside just a moment and duck over to Mr. Bob's Railroad bookshelf. Got a few entries for you today, and then we'll be back with the guys here to wrap things up. You know, as Lennox and Mark had said, this is generational knowledge. It is. It's not something that you can go to a book and find out, how do I make this work? You know, there are books out there that are going to tell you this is how it's supposed to work, or this is what it does. And I want to bear that out for you on the bookshelf here today. In our library here at Kalmbach, in the David P. Morgan Library, we have over 14,000 volumes on the subject of railroading. And when I went through and did a search for steam locomotive restoration, or how to restore a steam locomotive, there was a number of books that came up, but they tell the story of the restored locomotive, or why a locomotive was restored. And I brought some of those in just because they're interesting stories, and they hopefully will pique you to explore some of that generational knowledge. The first one I want to show you here, this is a book from author Brian Solomon, one of our regular authors, Super Steam Locomotives. And quick reference here, all the books I'm showing you today, they're a little older, some of them 20 years plus. Good stories, but as I've said before, you're going to have to go looking for them. Your library, maybe a railroad museum nearby. Solomon, Super Steam Locomotives, he in this book goes through and looks at the various locomotives that have been restored, big locomotives, over the past couple of decades, and tells the story of those locomotives and their restoration. Not how it was specifically done, how to restore certain parts, but the big overarching story. And then, of course, obviously, when they get running, some great photos, as always, from Brian Solomon. That one, again, Super Steam Locomotives. The other couple of books that are on the shelf here today, this one you got to seek out just because of the title. A Love Affair with Big Boys Toys, Restoring the 2926. The story again of a Santa Fe locomotive and its restoration. This book here, the photographs more detailing what is, some of the processes as you see here, work on the tender, some of the actual painting, some of the lettering. But again, this is what happened. It's not how you need to do these specific things. But A Love Affair with Big Boys Toys, Restoring 2926 by John Taylor. And the last one I found, and if you like Southern steam locomotives, seek this one out. Steam's Camelot, written by the late editor of Trains Magazine, Jim Wren. Jim, as we all know, from North Carolina, and he took after steam locomotives in the southern part of our country and tells the story, again, of many of those, how they were restored, not how you do it, but what happens when you do it. And I'm looking here, we've had a couple of guys washing Norfolk and Western 611. I'm pretty sure there's not a manual somewhere, or there's not a description in the book here that tells you how to get that done. So a couple of 3 books, good ones on the bookshelf today. Steam's Camelot by late Trains editor Jim Wren. The one you got to get just for the title, The Love Affair with Big Boys Toys, Restoring the 2926, and from Brian Solomon, Super Steam Locomotives. So check out the library, Railroad Museum. That's where you're going to need to find these, maybe in a used bookstore as well. Mark, great talking with you. Lennox, glad to have you get along here today. Hey, one thing I got to ask before we depart here today. Do we have a new engine house cat at the museum? we still, condolences on the passing of Dirt, but and we still get letters, emails, comments about your engine house cat. Do we have a new one yet?
Yes, we do. We knew this day was going to come, and so Dirt got a protege, and his name is DJ, which stands for Dirt Jr., and he too is orange and white, and Dirt taught him pretty well. He's learning the ropes, and he's following around the engine house. And, when we talk about Dirt, when we posted his passing, that post was seen by over 2 million people,
Yep.
which just flabbergasted us. And so what we're doing with Dirt is basically what the Forest Service did with Smokey the Bear. Smokey the Bear was an actual bear cub
Yep.
who got caught in a forest fire. And so what we want to do with Dirt is have his legacy live on as sort of an example of rail preservation, historic preservation. Yeah, it's these wonderful machines here, but you know what? If you can't hook the people, and we talked about the next generation, the people I need to hook are down here, and we do that with Dirt the Cat. In fact, we will have a book on Dirt coming out here very shortly too.
Oh, wow.
And so where Dirt may not be with us physically anymore, he's with us spiritually. And not only that, we've commissioned 2 statues of Dirt, and one will be over his gravestone, which is down by the depot. And then the other one will be here in the engine house where he was born. And so Dirt's going to be with us forever.
Great. Lennox, is one of your duties feeding DJ?
No.
No.
My duty is to keep him out of our food.
Yeah.
Oh, now that
He will sneak into our office and try to get up on camera.
that makes sense. That makes sense. I'm going to tip my hand on my age just a hair here. I actually saw the Smokey the Bear cub when he was alive at the National Zoo in DC. So you can now figure out that I'm not part of that youth movement anymore. And the final thought about Dirt. The day that you announced his passing, as that news came around, here in the halls around trains and our sister publications, there you could hear this whisper going through until finally someone I know popped into my office door and said, "Oh my God, Dirt's gone," and I said, "Oh man." So yeah, you have a symbol there, great symbol, fantastic.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, last thing, hey, if somebody wants to volunteer, go to your website, nnry.com, and contact you there. Lennox, I assume you're looking for help.
Always.
Always, fantastic.
Not just us in the shop either. We can use it everywhere.
Okay, great. Yeah, you probably put me on Weed Patrol or maybe in the gift shop or something. So
Wherever you want to volunteer.
there we go. Nevada Northern Railway Museum, nnry.com. Take and make sure you check that out. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. Best of luck on the project. Stay safe through your operating season. I know we'll touch base with you down the road, see how things are going.
Excellent. We'll see you down the track.
Very good. Hey, folks, KalmbachHobbyStore.com. KalmbachHobbyStore.com, your place to get all of your hobby needs, books from Kalmbach. Hey, videos. We have got some great videos on restored and operating steam locomotives. Make sure you take and check those out as well. We are going to see you on trains.com. New material being added there all the time, so make sure you check into that. And of course, you know what? Really soon, I want to see you behind an issue of Trains Magazine.